Hey everybody. So today I'm going to take you through the basics of opening up After Effects and just showing you a few little tricks and basically how to render stuff out. We're going to be doing this a lot. Basically the compositing items for final renders and stuff like that. You'll be utilizing a lot, especially in the class. So I think it's best if we go ahead and approach this early so you kind of know how to import stuff and add stuff to it. Say if you make a 3D model in Maya, you can kind of bring it over to After Effects and put the background in there, put any kind of overlay stuff, and go from there. So let me close this out. I was messing around. I'll just show you how I kind of recreated this little just demo motion graphic. After Effects is a huge motion graphic. It's been around for a while. I've been using it for quite a long time. There's probably other ones out now, other ones that I actually use nowadays that are kind of a little bit more advanced, but this will basically kind of get you up and running. It's an Adobe product, so you can kind of download it from the Creative Cloud. If you don't have it through the school, you can get the Creative Cloud free, and if not, then you should be able to create an Adobe account and access it kind of like a little app, and you can download all these different apps here. I just got a notification to some updates. I have like a little package here. Yeah, and all my After Effects are up to date. Yeah, I need to up to date a few of them for Photoshop. So I'll show you how to kind of get started with this and how you can kind of make things like this is actually a composite of 3 different items. And you only see one layer here because I've composited into this layer here. There's another layer here with a bunch of different layers here. I've got a text layer and got actually using 2 video layers of the same thing, and just a basic JPEG image that I brought in, and just utilizing the different adjustments and different effects to kind of make cool little intros and stuff like that. The basic art of motion graphic design, may get hired to create just an intro for a commercial. This is obviously how I would do it. Like I said, there are other options to explore, but this is what we'll be going over, and this is what we can utilize with our 3D models as well. So just close this out, save, and I'll just show you how to open it up. Once you've downloaded it and updated it to your desktop, if you do it to your desktop, you should be able just to really open it up. And it's opening up on my other screen here, so don't worry, I'm not sitting here with dead air. The splash screen comes in on the other screen, and now I've got something going on here. And there's a bunch of different tutorials. I mean, we can explore. Back in, I guess it was 2013, 2014, they had the Video Copilot series. I haven't checked up on those guys to see what they've been doing since then, but there's a lot of groundbreaking stuff with just how they can do little tricks and that. But since then, it's just everyone comes up with a different new trick and stuff like that. But the basic fundamentals are going to be the same on basically what I want to show you: how to import images, how to layer them, and how to pre-compose them, then how to basically render these out to upload to either YouTube or Vimeo, or just have an MP4 that we can view. And like I said, the reason I do this first off is because, say you create a 3D model, you create a few images of that, you render out a few images of that as a PNG, then you can just add it to this right here and kind of bring in assets for the bigger project. So 3D modeling and all that is just only one aspect of the full production. So it's good to start and learn this whole composition methods, because there's a lot of stuff that people do in Maya that they don't really have to do. If you've taken a class with me before, you notice a lot of my post stuff, I use Photoshop, which works the same way, and After Effects. Once you create the model, render something out, you can kind of clean it up, some of the effects, and make it look really nice and presentable, basically. So you open it up, you have this layout here, and if you're familiar with Photoshop, it's kind of the same Adobe look to it. You got these like little floating windows, and it's just the standard default is kind of where you want to stay at. So what you want to do is create a new composition. So new composition. Let's bring up this text box here. This is always what I work with, 1920 1080. You can set this thing to frame rate. I always keep mine at almost 30 frames per second, which if you don't know what that means, that's kind of what we're getting into with the animation aspect. You know, this is really understandingly why I kind of want to get into After Effects first, so you can kind of understand the timeline and how to things move. In general, it's a lot easier understanding it like this, I think, than just diving into Maya sometimes. So I usually keep my stuff at frames per second, but if it's anything 24, that's fine too. This is just usually how I roll with it, just the default. The preset 1080, 2997. The duration, I want this timeline to be 30 seconds. So, and you can actually change the background color, but we'll keep it black for now. So, okay, here we go. And you got this black box here. And if you scroll your middle mouse key, you can kind of zoom in, zoom out. Kind of cool. So this is your composition over here. There's nothing in there. And this is your timeline that you can kind of scroll back and forth. You see it's 30 seconds. If you go to the preview and hit play, it's playing. There's nothing playing, but that's your preview and your stop. And it'll bring it back. So let's start adding some stuff real quick here. So you import files. I was messing around with this right here, this kind of glitch thing right here. There's actually audio to it, which is kind of good. I want to kind of show you audio in After Effects too. So I'm going to bring this in. This is just a MP4 wave or MP4 file. Let's bring in that image. Kind of liked it. Wave. Yeah, okay, cool. So I want to just drop the image down into my project, my composition here. Now you notice this box right here? That means that basically my image is bigger than my composition settings. If you notice the settings are up here, so it's obviously bigger. You can go and scale. You got to be careful because if you don't mash shift, it won't scale uniformly. You can do that. Sometimes I like to go up here to layer. A lot of people don't know about this. Transform, fit to comp, and it just automatically sizes it out for you. Handy. It's doing nothing. If you notice, it made the image like a Photoshop layer. It laid it down here and basically just kind of laid it out this far right here. 30 seconds of that image. Kind of a boring video. There's really no need for it, but we're going to juice it up here. So let's bring in the video and put it below there. Now you notice that video is only 12 seconds, so it's obviously going to stop. You got these eyedroppers right here. You can turn one off. Now I'm just going to play my video and kind of scroll through it and see what that video is. It's just some static. You can play it. You can actually hear it if the audio is coming through. I think it is. If you notice this green, it was kind of caching it out. It's not really going to play real time until it actually runs the green through, and sometimes it won't run completely through if it's a heavy video or pretty big to remember. So what I'm going to do here, since I want my video to be 30 seconds, let's go 20 seconds. You can scroll this kind of crop. Say I want to crop this image. There we go. You can actually kind of left click and kind of crop the image. You can go down here to this mountain here and you can kind of like get it exact if you want to. Then you kind of start moving it frame by frame. So now I know both of those end on the same frame. Then I can zoom back out. Then you can actually take this comp layer right here. So you'll know it only runs there. You can trim comp to work area. So I'm running 12 seconds maybe, 12 frames. And if I would have known the exact frame of the actual video to begin with, I would have just set the settings to that, but I didn't. So now you see whenever I opened up the previous one, I had 2 layers down there just because I didn't do that. But you can just duplicate these layers basically if you wanted to. Control D, and now I've got 2 layers, and then I could have just taken this thing and scooted it basically to extend to the other one, but I don't need to do that. You can actually trim these layers like that. Doesn't cut it, it basically just trims it to that time where it is. So I'm going to get rid of this layer. Okay, so now I have these 2 layers together, and I want to kind of basically fade one on the other. So I'm going to move the image basically on the bottom, and I'm going to decollapse these brackets here. Then you'll see all these settings down here. And this is where you can begin to modify, like with the timeline, start keyframing, stuff like that, and then adjusting basically any kind of animation motion to it, or rotation, opacity, or the position of it. With the video, I just want to kind of like turn the opacity down a little bit so you can barely see it. So I'm just going to kind of, so it looks like there's noise on the actual image itself. So it's kind of layering in there, so you don't really notice. Looks like it's barely kind of like trying to come in, something's kind of broadcast. And then if you render it out, now you'll see that you've got like this noise over this image. And like I said, there's other ways you can go about doing this, but this is just kind of showing you how you layer things and composite them together. So let's look at this text here, because I'm sure you're going to be wanting to use like introductory, or like credits or something like that, you know. So let's just throw another element in here, some text, the text tool. Let's type in retro. You can adjust your fonts over here. Get your characters. I have this computer pixel font loaded to my laptop, so it just kind of works that way. You can adjust the size of the need to select them. And if you haven't started experimenting with the tools up here, some of these I use, some of these I never do. If you're familiar with Photoshop, it kind of works the same way. You've got your select tool, you've got your rotation tool. You can create a mask that way, you know, and obviously the text tool and the clone stamp and eraser tool, stuff like that. I honestly don't use a lot of these right here. I'll just do it in Photoshop if I need to, but that just means I just haven't had a project that's led me there, but the options are there. So let's say I've got my title right here. And so now if you notice, it's added another element down here. If you wanted to kind of put the text behind the tape noise so the text is affected by the noise, you can. So it looks like that's trying to come in there too. Now let's do something here. Let's decollapse this and look at the transform. The position is what we're going to be looking at. This is your position of where that text is on the actual board here itself. So if I were to actually select it and hit an arrow key and move it, you see the way my position is changing. So I'm just going to like select it and put it off screen like this right here. And these are easy side swipes. Most of them are built into engines. You know, you can do this on your phone, like, oh, side swipe in, side swipe left. You know, that's for what this demo is. It is what it is. But if you had like a PNG of like an element, a 3D model, you can kind of bring it in really slowly. So how do I make this move in here over time? So right now we're at the 0 state where the video would start. So, and this is our position to keyframe this stuff. You just click on one of these things right here, and you notice it created this little diamond right here. And if I just went maybe 5 seconds in the future, and I actually adjusted this thing and moved this thing into where I want to. If you hit shift and arrow key, it moves it faster. See, it's kind of creating a path for you. You can actually adjust that path if you want to. And it also created another keyframe for you. You don't necessarily need to click on it if it's already in keyframe mode. So if you scroll back and kind of see how it just kind of side swipes in. Now let's do something, let's do opacity. I don't want it coming in like that. I don't want it kind of like blurring in about right there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to crank this thing down to 0, the opacity, and I'm going to keyframe it. And then I'm going to go to that keyframe where it's completely in the middle, and I'm going to crank this thing up to 100. So, and you can move these keyframes around. If you want it to move that keyframe right there to where you want it opacity way back there, that's fine. You can cut and paste these. Sometimes I do that if I have multiple stuff going on. You can control, you can select both of the keyframes, copy, then paste. Like you put your mark over here and paste it so it would kind of appear over there. But you see the way I've got like these letters that kind of come in, it just kind of statically move like that. So let's just cache this out or run this, preview. And it runs. Now you'll hear the audio. Audio is something I wouldn't suggest. You can start, I use Audition if I'm really going to get into any kind of audio manipulating, like adding, taking away hissing noise or background noise and stuff like that. Kind of in the levels of doing audio, if I'm doing it for production, sometimes Premiere's got a really good audio base. It's easier to control. After Effects is kind of lower on the totem pole when it comes to audio, which is no problem. You can do it. The way you get to the audio is you actually go to like your video layer, you uncollapse it, and go to audio right here. You can look at the waveform of the actual audio coming in. You can adjust the volume. Right now it's set at default at 0. You can make it louder. See the way my wave file is growing in. Or you can kind of like turn it down or kind of pan it. You can keyframe the volume, which is kind of fun sometimes. So if you had it right there and you wanted to crank it up, then take it back down. So now you've got this like audio going in and out, you know. Most of the time, just me personally, I don't do a lot of audio editing in After Effects unless it's really simple like this. But just the thing to keep your mind on is knowing that if you've got a layer that has audio in there, it's going to render out. And if you're wondering where all that noise is coming from, then there's probably some audio somewhere. So in Jest, sometimes I just tell people, just crank it down and just don't even render it. And you won't hear it in the audio. You can select it in the render not to hear the audio. But I'm not going to go over that right now. I'm going to delete these keyframes. Just keep my audio down so I don't even hear anything. So there's a lot of other things we could spend time on too. You can add adjustment layers like new. I just right clicked right there, new adjustment layer. And this is kind of a blank layer that you can add effects to. This is what I would suggest adding effects to. Say if you want to add some color, add some levels to it. If I can get it on there, man. It's going to basically adjust everything underneath the layer here. So if you move this adjustment layer down here, it's only going to affect basically the image in the background. So you can really hone in on what's going on. The color correct. I will do this a lot actually. Curves are what you can delete up here and go back and use curves, because curves are my kind of go-to editing. And it's only being, you can put effects and stuff like this on the actual layers itself, but I just kind of get, sometimes if I'm affecting the whole thing, it doesn't really matter. Curves usually, color correcting usually will make the render time a little bit tough. If I hit it like this right here, that's not too bad. Let me go ahead and delete that though. And delete this adjustment layer. We'll talk more about adjustment layers, masking too. I won't get into that yet. But what I do want to talk about though real quick before we render it out is pre-composing. Now, say I want to take this whole video basically and fade it in from black. You could go in and like each one of these like assets, like keyframe the opacity from 0 to 100% in the first couple seconds, but that just kind of seems like it takes forever. What I would do is I would select all these layers here, go up to layer, composition, where am I at? Layer, pre-compose. This box is going to come up. New composition name. This is where you can rename it. This is my full vid. Move all the attributes in a new composition. Yes. Okay. Now all of a sudden this thing changed to one layer. Don't worry. It is nothing to worry about. You go back to your projects tab. What it did, it created a new layer based upon those 3 layers that were in there. So basically if you're left click here, you'll go back to your other layer and you notice that you've got your 3 separate layers, and then you've got this full composition layer. So if you go here now and you go to your opacity, turn it down, let's keyframe it. Let's go like the first couple frames, first couple seconds. I keep thinking that's the second, but that's frames. So now I'm going to crank this up to 100. My whole thing's going to fade in from black. Now I'll play this. The way I got a nice little, brought it in. The good thing about that is I can still go in here and adjust stuff. So say I wanted to bring this in faster, you're not messing with your composition, your main composition layer. Any kind of adjustments you make in here are obviously going to affect this out one, because everything is layered upon layer. And then you'll kind of run into the fact where you'll have like compositions, you'll keep adding compositions to this, then you'll need to like pre-compose all these into another composition, then another composition. It just gets a lot easier with pre-composing. Honestly, if you're working in After Effects and you have layers like to where it's just like you can't even see your preview window, you need to go ahead and start pre-composing, because you're just gumming yourself up really. And you'll notice this with different scenes. So if you render out like a 3-second scene of your animation and then another 2-second scene from Maya, basically you could kind of pre-compose those 2 scenes together, and it's just an easier render to do stuff. See, and now I could actually add any kind of adjustment layer to this layer, and it would affect the whole thing. So okay, so I want to render this thing out. You can go up here to this render, add to render queue. I would suggest doing that. With your Adobe Cloud, you should have downloaded Media Encoder. And Media Encoder can be used for a bunch of different stuff, not only this stuff. I used it the other day to rip some MP3s for somebody for a CD. So you're going to want to download it. It comes free with the other stuff. Basically, if you got any kind of Premiere or anything like that, it's going to come on there, and it works with all of these basically. So you're going to want to send your compositions to basically Media Encoder to render it out. So what I do is, you don't want to be in this one right here, because I want to render this right here out, my fade up from the black. So this one, I'm just going to select that one. Add to Adobe Media Encoder queue. And nothing happens. It just takes a minute to open up. You'll see it open up down here. It's opening on my splash screen on my other monitor right now. And I'll move it over as soon as it opens up. There it is. Oh, I'm sorry. Before we do that, save. Save as. Project. You want to keep them in a separate folder. Just in case After Effects crashes for any reason before you start rendering, because if something happens, because you could basically, once you have it in here, you could basically close After Effects, but if you close it and you haven't saved it, then we want to talk about that. So just make sure you save. So it's added this composition up here. Now I've already had it set to how I wanted to render out. I want to render this H.264. Just do it. You can go Blu-ray. I wouldn't suggest doing all this. You can render out different things like GIF, WAV file. Whenever I said I ripped an MP3 the day, I had a video and I needed the audio from it. Didn't necessarily need the video, but I needed to put the MP3 on a CD, actually. Can you believe it? So I took the video and put it in here and then made an MP3 out of it. Those are the good things about Media Encoder. You can actually make JPEG sequences, stuff like that. We're going to go H.264. We're going to go, the presets is going to make you go to another link. It's going to send you, it opens, it takes a minute to open up. This is where you work all your presets. This box here opens up. Output name, you can always do this, but I just kind of change the presets. You can just do, really, you can kind of experiment and find which one you like. This one's pretty solid, the YouTube 1080, either that or the Vimeo 1080, kind of the same thing almost. This is just different compression rates. You know, they have specialty ones, so if you're putting them to YouTube, stuff like that. If you're just doing it for a small mobile device, you know, I've not gone through all these and saw all the differences, but I'm sure you can find that. 4K is going to be really big. We want to keep it our 1080 because that's what we have our composition set to. So you just hit that one. Okay, I already had mine set. And this is your output file. So you click on that, and we want to send it to desktop. I'm just going to call this retro. I can't spell retro demo. Video files MP4, send to my desktop. Already did this earlier, so everything's set. So just hit play up here, and then it just starts to render out. Now, obviously, if it's a really big file, it'll take longer. But this is the best compression that you're going to get. For the longest time, you know, whenever Media Encoder, whether it wasn't working with After Effects, I would render out in After Effects and it would just take forever. But the fact that you can send it to the queue now is really convenient. So let's find out. Got this render demo here. We'll play it. It's really big for my screen, just because if you look at the properties on it, 1920 1080, that's what I wanted. It's an MP4. I don't think it's going to let me play it here. Yeah, it's playing. It's just I have this on a second monitor, and for some reason my graphic card doesn't work with this the QuickTime player, which is what you should use. So I'm going to actually close this, see it like crashes, which is fine. It'll play on my other monitor, but I'm going to open it up with Windows Media Player. For some reason it reads over here. So I have my nice HD video, play it over, fades in from the black, and then my little animation comes in. Voila. So, okay, we'll go over do a little bit more with After Effects, kind of exploring masking and some of the effects you can add here. Like I said, this has always been my go-to when I'm doing like a lot of motion graphic stuff. When it comes to video, we'll do a lot of stuff in post with Photoshop, just still images and stuff like that. But you know, obviously you need, this is a media class, so you need to know how to composite stuff. So, like I said, some of the other programs you may find better. I know Nuke was really good for compositing. I use Touch Designer for compositing, and I could get into that. It's a really good, but it's a little bit more advanced in terms of like using certain codes and the way the layout is. But this is the most bare bones, basically, Premiere-ish like compositing, heavy compositing program. You can do a lot of good animating in this right here. So get used to using this and be able to render out with it, because we'll be utilizing this with some of the sequences that we render out with Maya, because in Maya I don't want to render out videos at all. I render out, say if I've got a 30-second animation, I'm not going to render out 30 seconds of video from Maya. I'm going to render out 30 seconds of however many frames I need, which could be 300-400 frames, and then I bring those frames into After Effects and use them as sequence files, and that's what makes the videos out of them, and we'll go over that in the future. But okay, yeah, well, hope this helps, and thanks for watching. Bye.